So we'll begin with some meditation. Just get comfortable. When you sit down to meditate, what's your purpose? Are you interested in becoming more calm, more tranquil? Having the intention to clear the mind, to settle down? Or maybe you have a technique that you feel is beneficial and you want to make use of it. And of course, ultimately, what we want to be able to do is allow the body and mind to become relaxed and at ease to the point where we can let go of whatever we're clinging to. So it's helpful to have techniques that help us relax. And of course, if we come to meditation with an idea of getting something, it's probably not going to go very well, because that's really the wish of the self. And it's understandable. We're taught that we should experience certain things or try to do certain things, try to calm the mind, try to stay with the breath, things like that. It feels like an agenda, a goal. But as we become a bit more experienced and come to understand the Dhamma better, then we recognize that it's not about a goal, at least not from that place of me wanting to accomplish something or get something. It's really much more about letting go and not using that as a goal either, but just a natural process. Once we understand or experience the suffering of holding on, of wanting and wanting to get rid of, all wanting to get rid of comes from the sense of self. Who's wanting? Who's wanting to get rid of something? And it's this idea we have that we are someone who doesn't want something or wants something, to be comfortable, to be safe, to be happy. So much of the time we're looking outside ourselves for the cause of this suffering. Someone else is to blame, or circumstances are the problem. what gets revealed as we practice, as we investigate, is that we have the ability right here and now to become still, to even if we don't become still, you might think, oh, my mind's never still. And yeah, we can step back and observe that, to be present with whatever it is. And notice that there are spaces between those thoughts. There are spaces between painful feeling, pleasant feeling, spaces between the breaths. Space between the words. And we can notice what we experience there. What is it? It's like this. And in that stillness, there's something steady that's not coming and going. It's not about the sense of self and all of the change that happens with all these sankharas, conditioned things. And we can notice that we can rest in that awareness, and it's available all the time. And at first, it might seem boring or so unremarkable that we want something to happen. We want some kind of stimulation because that's what we're used to. I should be doing something. I should be making something happen. And actually, whatever we can make happen is more sankharas, still conditioned, still coming and going, limited. That quiet steadiness is Dhamma, the unconditioned. That's what's there in the background all the time. Whenever your attention rests there, you get the sense of it. And I get used to it, used to being quiet, still, content. But if what we think is that stillness and it changes somehow, then again we step back and observe from the position of being a witness. It's that position itself that's unchanging. So getting the sense of what's changing, sankhara coming and going, and the sense of what's steady and stable that we touch in on and get distracted from again and come back to. That's a very important distinction. So we start to understand what our true home really is. And how we can know that is because we can rest in that awareness no matter what's going on. Happy things, pleasant things, scary things, stressful things, whatever is happening in the mind and the body, to come back to that witness position, that awareness of what is happening in the present moment. Stable. And it's also kind, loving. There's no fear there, there's no resentment or anger, no excitement, no possessing, no owning. It's merely a knowing, wisdom, awareness, sati sampajanya. And that knowing, that Dhamma awareness, that's not something we can possess or create or destroy. It's our true nature. We can't really be other than that. It's just a perception that we have this character or personality, body, feeling, other khandas, and all the entanglements with the world, which of course all feel very real. And we want to address those circumstances in skillful ways because we live in this conventional reality. But the most skillful approaches we can take really come from that stand of Dhamma, not from the stand or the stance of the sense of self. Because working through the sense of self always has delusion and distortion in it, bending towards some kind of self interest. Even if we feel like we're constantly giving, if it's coming from the sense of self, then it's me giving. And it's got this distortion in it. And if we can relinquish that, it always feels to me like a stepping back and letting go, giving up. Relief. And then it's a pure giving. No strings attached. And that's really the way to live. No strings attached. But it's also not about cutting the strings or getting rid of them, or it's about seeing them. We don't have to push away or criticize ourselves for the entanglements we're in, the strings, because that's just more me trying to get rid of something. But instead, that observing, this is what it's like to be attached. This is what it's like to want something to be different. This is what it's like to have judgments about others or myself. It's like this. And even as I say that right now, I feel the compassion arising. Not coming from the sense of self, but coming from the Dhamma. So whatever is happening right now with your body, with your mind, just notice it. Be aware of it. We all have different set of conditions. In this present moment, it's like this. And the conditions themselves, it's not really important. They're changing. We'll draw the meditation to a close now. Gradually come back. We've been kind of going through a little bit of a transition from winter retreat into a couple days after we came out of retreat, we went to Spain. I think most of you probably know that. And it was really lovely to be with Seminary Sujata and Ayya, Arindama, and Agara could go to me in this beautiful 13th century village. But travel is not the easiest thing ever, you know. And we came back pretty jet lagged and tired, and quite a few things going on, and not yet caught up from all the email and everything that came during the 3-month winter retreat that we haven't taken a look at. So it's easy to start thinking, well, have we lost the calm? Or, you know, can we practice under these conditions in the same way? And, you know, that kind of thing. And just reflecting on how, you know, all of us who, you know, go on retreats and or spend time under different circumstances where practice seems more available, easier, there's more stillness, there's less impingement from the world, and then into circumstances where there's a lot more happening around us, a lot more that we're expected to do, responsibilities. And that's really when we more than ever need to remember that the Dhamma is here all the time, that we can take this present moment to be aware of what's going on, of what is happening in that stillness, in that silence. It doesn't take a lot of time. I remember hearing that Ajahn Chah one time, someone told him that he didn't have time to practice. He said, "Do you have time to breathe?" It's like, just, remember that we have the ability to observe with awareness, which means not coming from the sense of self. It's not about how we label or perceive how we are or what's happening. It's about being directly present with what's happening, with what we feel, with from that witnessing position, what we're experiencing. And it's so important to let go of the words, the labels, the views, the opinions, the perceptions, and any proliferation around them. And it's useful to think of it as, words are sankharas, limited, conditioned things. All those things I mentioned. What's it like when we step back from that? And right now, I can imagine you might be having any kind of thoughts about this, like, I don't know what that means, or yes, I experienced that. Yes, I understand. And I think it's good to not get caught up in where we think we might be with regard to any of this. Just wherever we're feeling stress, wherever we're feeling dukkha, to witness it. It's like this. And if it feels like we're still like, let's see, feeling stressed, step back another step and look at that. Like there may be layers. By being present with the experience as it's happening, regardless of what it is. We're so heavily conditioned to accomplish things. And having that long to-do list, whether it's clearing the email or building the kuti or whatever it is in your life, it's like, sure, we're going to do those things, engage in that, take care of things. And yet we don't have to be doing it from a place of me and mine. Like Ajahn Gana says, just do it, do your work for the sake of work. Give for the sake of giving. Do what's good for the sake of goodness, not for the sense of self. And how do you know? Because when we do things from the sense of self, when we want something as a result, like some puffing up of the ego, for example, we can feel it. It's stressful. It's unpleasant. And there are those times in life when things are really hard, maybe because of an illness, maybe because we've lost someone close to us, maybe there's a big disappointment. And maybe our coping mechanisms fade away. I remember a story someone told me once about their father being ill in the hospital. And there had always been this tension between them. But when they went to see him, because he was in, very serious condition, but he was, alert. She said suddenly there was just none of that tension there, none of that um, that would get created or be there because of each of them, their sense of self, really. All the defenses were dissolved, and there was this connection. But then they said as soon as things got better, the defenses went back up again. The um, the personality, the persona, the protections, and to think about what is it like to be present, just present without all that. And you might think, well, if my defense mechanisms, if my personality, my facade is allowed to dissolve, am I just unprotected in the world? And I would say, no, I think our protection is stronger coming from Dhamma. I think our responses to things are so much more effective. But I also want to say that when we recognize that, we're um, interfacing with the world from that place of the sense of self, to not be judgmental about it. Just again, step back and observe. This is what's happening now. This is how it feels. This is how it is. It's a practice. Being present. When we think about letting go of our attachments, letting go of our, you might say, our commitment to being this person. It feels like it's something we should do, like decide to let go, but it doesn't really work that way in my experience. I think letting go happens because of our insight into how things actually are. This is why this emphasis on noticing impermanence, suffering, and not self. Like if we're, starting to study dependent origination during sutta study, and it can seem like there's so much like trying to understand it intellectually, and it can feel kind of dry and complicated. But actually, it's just there are causes and conditions. Everything in this world is dependent upon other causes, cause and effect. And when we think we want to let go, I think what helps us to let go is the putting in the conditions to make that possible. So, when on the one hand, we're looking at all of this, what's in conventional reality as causes and conditions, and the mind can kind of go, well, that's no good. I just want ultimate reality. Yeah, but we use it. We use the body, even though it's going to die. We use our ability to feel, to discern between, pleasant and unpleasant. We use our ability to have the intention to sit down, meditate, or do walking meditation, whatever it is. And we use that in order to create the conditions where we can be present with what we experience, where we can settle into awareness and let go of what we're clinging to. So the causes and conditions that help us to let go, as I said, are really seeing what it is we're clinging to, feeling the suffering of it. So Ajahn Sumedho said what his advice for learning how to let go is to really grasp onto something very hard. A lot of times we don't have to try to, we already have it in our life, something we're really holding on to. And to examine that, investigate it. What's that feel like? What does it feel like to want somebody in our life to be different than they are? We can try to get them to change, but you probably already know how well that works. And we can also want ourselves to be different than we want our personality to be different than it is. Or maybe we want the past to be different than it is. Some painful memories from the past. We want to control the future. And whatever it is we're grasping, whatever we're clinging to, if we see the suffering in it, then we're likely to let it go. It's the insight that really helps. So being tired is like this, or having worries about something that's going on at work, it's like this. And caring about someone and seeing them suffer is like this. Wanting the war to stop is like this. The happiness that we feel with the springtime is like this. Living among the redwood trees is like this. Joy, sorrow, whatever it is, it's going to change. It has its opposite. That's the nature of conventional reality. It all comes in pairs. We're not going to have lasting peace in this world. It's not possible. It carries war right along with it. But it's still important for us to put in whatever conditions we can for peace to happen. It's an interesting predicament we're in samsara. And it's never ending. It's a wheel, it keeps turning. the only relief, the true relief, is stepping outside that cycle. So outside that cycle of dependent origination, where it's timeless and here and now, immediate. And relief from the constant changing. Unification, not those sets of dual circumstances anymore, where we're not separate. We can look at our own patterns, our own habits. It's been trained into us one way or another, whether it's anxiety or worry or ignoring what might be going on, acting like it's not happening, or um, just kind of trying to put a positive spin on everything, or whatever our mechanisms are, turning to something that's distracting, you know, we can step back and observe it, see that it has a value and it also has its problems. Because that's the way it is in conventional reality. Things have their value, their positive side, and they also the downside is always there too. And making use of things, but really observing, understanding their limitation is what helps us to remember to step back and observe, rest in awareness and trust it. So, of course, you already know that this can only be known by you yourself. You can't learn it from someone, but you can kind of catch it in a way like you catch a cold. I feel like spending time with people or listening to great teachers who understand this can help us get the sense of it. And then we experience it directly ourselves. So I think, in a way, what I've just said is pretty general. And I'm wondering if you have any questions or examples that will bring in more specific. Ling?
Thank you, Ayya. So when you said we observe, we step back, and we have a trust, I was wondering, trust, I don't know if my understanding is correct. Is it trust things will change, things will be different, or trust it will pass? we will get better?
Yeah, I don't think that that's really, I mean, it's obvious that things will change. There's no way they can stay the same in samsara. But the trust is in the awareness itself. So to start to get that sense or that distinction of what really is this awareness, this presence with what we're experiencing and the relief that comes from that. So that's what we want to recognize as something we can touch into at any time. Experience it. It's hard with words to describe it, but when we're having that, we step back, at least that's the way I see it, and we're aware of what we're experiencing. It's not so much about, just trusting that it's going to end or change, because we don't know which way it's going to change. It's going to change, but that's not the point. The point is that we can be aware of it, and in that awareness itself is peace, is a kind of letting go. Do you experience that?
Hmm, a kind of sort of. Um, I don't know if it's a piece, but definitely the kind of strong emotion, it's kind of dissolving.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Maybe at the moment, I remember when I was aware how I was feeling
Mm-hmm.
after quiet hours. I realized that strong emotion wasn't was quite diluted.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't know what to do, but I had feeling I was not want things differently. I become maybe more acceptable.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe I don't know if that's peace, but that's sort of improvement.
Right. That's my experience too. Like there can be strong feelings, strong emotions, and then observing them, and especially, like I've used a lot, and this is I think the most effective approach is you feel where you feel it in your body, and then you can observe that changing. There's also this, like, we have the ability to recognize what it's that that sense of that observer, like the knowing itself or the observing, the awareness itself. We can experience that that's solid, that that's peaceful, and that this, whatever we're observing, yeah, it keeps changing. And it's true that when we observe the emotions, they start to become more diffuse, usually. And what we want to bring in or recognize that we can see this with wisdom. So we do see its impermanent nature. We see that, these circumstances are the way they are. Sometimes we can do something to make it better or help or change something, but a lot of times we can't do anything. The Buddha said, when something's happening, do the things that you would ordinarily do to try to make it better. In the example he gives, he talks about making offerings and prayers and things like that, chanting, whatever. He said, whatever basically the cultural conditioning or religious conditioning is that helps things. And then if it doesn't get better, recognize the karma is really strong. And what can I do now? You know? And so it's like, especially when we're dealing, well, there's all kinds of circumstances that we can't do anything about. And, and what happens when we hold it in awareness and we're not, we're from this witness position instead of from the sense of self that's so embedded and entangled in it and grasping on to wanting it to be different. If we're coming to it with awareness, it's also with wisdom. You seeing it as it is, seeing that this is the way it is, and I can't make it be different. When we say it's like this, it's beyond the description, the words. So coming from a place that's not the sense of self. And then when we practice in this way, we recognize that knowing, and we can also recognize that that is peaceful, and that we can, in the present moment, reside right there.
Yeah, that's definitely what I felt. I was able to stay in that present moment
Mhm.
when I was aware.
Mhm. And you can just come back to that anytime. If we get caught up in what's happening, we feel threatened or afraid or sad or angry or whatever it is, you can just come back to that experience, that presence. And we keep doing that, and that's how we start to come to trust it. We're trusting the awareness itself, regardless of what people call it, ultimate reality, pure consciousness, the knowing, nibbana, whatever you want to call it. How do we know it? It's peaceful. There's contentment. There's wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayya.
Shane,
Oh, yeah. Good to see you
hi.
all.
Good to see you too.
Well, I think I have something that I can share that is kind of related. And if it's not, please stop me and I'll just be quiet. Um, so I moved to Missouri
Oh,
in the last couple months, and the stress of the move was it was interesting kind of watching the mind and how it reacts to the entire situation, meaning like my mind will think about things. And when I was young, I noticed that my mind didn't think about this at all, but every little possibility of something going wrong, like not being able to get to through security, not being able to catch my flight. The moving company, what if they have an accident and all my belongings are destroyed? What if, the plane crashes, I get to Kansas City and, I'm not able to get to my apartment. And what if I get to my apartment, that it turns out that who I was being contacting this entire time, is all a scam. None of it was real. And, there's all this kind of stuff going, and it's just, and I stop and it's like, okay, if any of these situations come up, we'll deal with it as it comes. I
mhm,
can't sit there and focus on all these little things being being a real possibility and just driving myself nuts with this stuff and just stressing myself out
mhm,
and just let it be. But it
mhm,
kept kind of going on and on. And it's just like, okay, this is a story my mind's telling me. Just,
mhm,
just let it tell its story, and we'll just, if something happens, we'll deal with it.
Mhm.
And I get here, and the move went fine. Everything was pretty smooth.
Yeah.
No big, no none of that stuff ever really happened. But now, I'm here. I got sober here in Colombia, and it's been about 17 years since I've been here, and I know quite a few people here, and so on and so forth. But another thing that's been kind of interesting to me is just watching how the mind is adjusting to a new area. It feels it's almost like this wave that I kind of have to ride, because it almost seems like it's the mind is kind of recalibrating to what is normal.
Mhm.
And it's just, well, like all this different, everything is different.
Mhm.
Mind is not used to seeing, being here in this place, and on and on and on. And another thing that's been obvious to me is how much, I have grown since I have left.
Mhm.
How much things are different externally and internally. And
Mhm.
it's just been a really interesting experience just to kind of go through and watch.
Mhm.
And I'm just really glad to be here, and glad to see you and see some familiar faces. And thanks for letting me talk a little bit.
Yeah, I like your examples and I like hearing that you're aware, because yeah, the mind can come up with we can make up anything. And doubt is actually a product of too much thinking. And, it's true that, I mean, can you really stop thinking? Like, I don't think so. But what we can do is see it for what it is, which is what you're doing. It's like being present with it. And I think all of us, we can be present with what we're experiencing. We see it with wisdom. Like you said, I can't really believe all this stuff my mind is telling me. This is just crazy making, right? And of course, the mind can create all of this possibilities of what could go wrong. And there's a feeling that arises with each thought. And if we are really observing it with wisdom, then we know, yeah, this is just the mind making stuff up. And I think what you told the mind, okay, we'll handle this. This is coming from a place of wisdom. Like we'll handle it if it comes. What are the chances of it coming? Who cares? In a sense, we could say that to the mind a lot. Ajahn Gana says this a lot. Who cares? You can take that two ways. You can take it as who is the personality, the supposed person caring about this, or we can take it as it just doesn't make any difference. Most of what we imagine is going to happen that we fear never happens. The things that come along, we will deal with them when they come anyway. It's true that it's beneficial to have some, plans in place or, avoid certain disasters, taking care of things, making good decisions. That's one thing. But when the mind is, going off, making all this stuff up, it's papancha, you know? Yeah,
I'm sorry, what was that word?
papancha,
Papancha. Okay,
proliferation.
gotcha.
Yeah, mental proliferation. So I really like this short sutta in the Book of Sixes about things that if a practitioner delights in these six things, the Buddha said they've laid the groundwork for awakening. You delight in the Dhamma, the teaching, you delight in the practice, the bhavana, you delight in letting go, um, pahana, I think it is. You delight in seclusion, in viveka, but there's a prefix to it that I don't remember, but it's viveka basically. You delight in you delight in kindness, or it's abhyapaja, but it's like non-ill will, but pointing at kindness, and you delight in non-proliferation. So, these kind of little things that we can have kind of at the fingertips of the mind, you might say, available. This is kind of wisdom that we can like talk to our, like conditioned mind that runs off and does all this stuff. It's like, wait a minute, let's come back to not proliferating. And let's delight in that non-proliferation, things like that. Because the mind is running off of patterns, conditioning, and we got it from somewhere, but we don't have to worry about where it's from. It's just dealing with it as it comes up. So in a way, you're already dealing with what's happening now when you're aware that what the mind is spinning is not what you're going to follow. So yeah, that's the practice. And I appreciate the reconditioning, like to the like when we've lost someone that we've lived with or been really close to, spent a lot of time with, and they pass away, then so much of what we do in our life needs to be reshaped. Like that person was included in everything. Like you see people who live together and they consult each other on what they're going to eat and when they're going to do this and all this stuff and who's going shopping and who's whatever. All of those things that you do together, the person who's left behind has to rewire the brain. And you're describing, Shane, a rewiring of the brain from the environment you were in to the new environment. So you have to learn, where is the grocery store and where is the post office and what I have to do the things that a normal, life requires. And then all of this stuff that, like, who do I spend time with and making friends and all that kind of stuff, or in your case, coming back to a place where you were before and running into people you haven't seen in many years. And then what's that like? And so, yeah, there's a actual change in the brain creating new pathways, and it takes some time.
Thank you. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to see you. And Joni?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I think this applies. I've been understanding more in regards to memories, like in the work with death contemplation often has, recollection of good acts and letting go of regrets. So it's been really interesting because it's a lot of the, I think, regrets of unskillful acts, the ones that I have the most shame about are like 50 years ago. So, and as I'm working with that, I'm seeing that it's all, I don't even know if the memory that I'm having is even accurate or like what I made up, in a sense. It just, I felt like this was just applied to like what you have been talking about, how it's not just in the present. Well, it is in the present, even if it's memories, but I'm not explaining this very well, but that deeper understanding of how memories are so fabricated or illusory. The perceptions of the memories are not really connected necessarily to what the reality was.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, for any of us, if we've compared our memory to the memory of someone else who shared the same circumstance, like you did something happen. And I mean, when I talk to my brother, you'd think we had two totally different realities of what was going on, in the same family, in the same place. And who cares? Why have we kept that memory from 50 years ago alive at all? There's to look at, how judgmental we are of ourselves and others, and our social and cultural conditioning that has, it really encouraged us to do that, to be self-critical, to blame ourselves. If we really dig into that, investigate that, what's it for? Maybe there's some underlying idea that somehow I can protect myself if I, look at my failings and I really beat myself up for it, and then how realistic is that? So all of these things we can use the wisdom of, this memory may not be at all correct. What does correct mean about the past? The past is the past. It's just an illusion now. And what's the point of, thinking this over again? Those kinds of things we can put forward there, but probably the most powerful approach is recognizing this too is just a sankhara.
Mm.
Sankharas come and go. Every word is a sankhara. Every language is just sankharas. Every thing around us are sankharas, and none of them are ever going to help us to get enlightened. That's what the reality that we can depend upon is the awareness with wisdom of what all this is. Illusion. And our attachment to it is out of ignorance, delusion.
Self.
The sense of self. Continuing, like, what is a memory about me having done something unskillful or skillful in the past? That degree you got or whatever, it's all in the past. Like Ajahn Brahm, he many times has talked about, his time as a theoretical physicist and the degree he has and stuff. And he's like, but I couldn't do that now. It's just in the past. Attaching meaning to it is just to like prop up the sense of self. And in a way, when we attach meaning to these memories of having done something unskillful, we're still propping up the sense of self. So it's just to know that, not to be hard on ourselves because of it, but to just see this is the pattern that has been developed. In my case, coming out of a religious conditioning where there's a very judgmental God, if I'm judgmental of myself, maybe I can get maybe God will pass over that because I'm taking care of it. I don't know what's really going on in there, but who cares? And that's not who we really are. The right and wrong, good and bad, all of the duality fades away when we understand, when we see ultimate reality.
Thank you, Ayya.
Yeah, thank you, Joni. Sarah?
Hi, it's nice to be here to see you all.
See you too, Sarah.
Yeah, I had to speak because of Shane's share. I also just moved from California to Oregon, and it's been really interesting observing my like conditioning that I was less aware of. So it's like kind of shifting. Like if you stand on the other side of a piece of art or something, like sculpture, you see different things.
Mhm.
It's been really interesting noticing some things about my conditioning that I've always known, but it's like it's given me a chance to work with them. So I'll give you an example. So I have a attention deficit disorder, and I've known that my whole life. So I've developed a lot of compensatory skills and sort of see myself as like this like person who gets stuff done, despite it. But I hide if I ever make a mistake. I'm very like I have a lot of shame about it and I hide things. So moving up here, my husband's got dementia and pretty serious ADD that has never been treated. He didn't really realize he had it. So I've sort of functioned for both of us for 35 years. And
Mm.
and so being in that mode with this move was impossible. I couldn't do it. And I was really aware of how much dukkha that was causing to try to like just to push and push and push and like to hide and to all the things that I do and no, starting to I remember it was like 1 week that you talked about things sliding into oblivion, and that it was like that started something, and noticing like the feeling of things being out of control as not a bad thing.
Yeah.
um, yeah, and playing around with that and being able to observe it without responding to it like I have in the past. Like I'm not a completely changed human being, but it's really given me my practice a lot of richness. So thank you for how you've helped me with that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yes, yes.
Mm.
Because it's out of control, all of it. So much of it. Um, yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Sarah.
Thanks. Mm. Thank you.
How's your husband taking to the new environment?
He's the best person you could possibly want in this situation. He's easygoing. He's always happy. I have nothing to complain about, and it's been hard on him, but I think he's handled it with a good nature.
Great,
Mm,
great,
mm, thanks.
good. Glad to hear it. Yeah. Catherine?
Hi.
Hi.
Um, so I've been listening and reading, well, in some of the things I've been listening to and reading recently, um, the idea came up several times about um yeah, just all the phrase or the idea of sort of gratitude for this human life for or for making the most of this human life. Um and then I don't know, recently it just sort of really dawned on me how I, not I, how I am just a visitor, like a guest in my life, this human life, um, which has been feeling amazing. Just thinking of, yeah, I also my brain has ADHD and I have a brain that can be categorized as autistic. And that as well, having this sense of, oh, I'm a visitor and a guest in this body and with this brain that has these traits. But what made me think of this and want to speak was when you were talking about grasping or, noticing the things you're really grasping onto, is because I don't know, since I had this sort of dawning realization the life that I'm in suddenly seems so, and use another one of your words like about how the world is so delicious. Suddenly my life seems so delicious, like with this sense of being a guest in it. Just, I guess I've been through a lot the last few years, and a lot of the time I've just felt miserable and unhappy about everything. Um, And now that I have this sense of just being a guest in this life, I suddenly everything seems amazing. Like I have this soft, warm bed to sleep in. I have nutritious food. I have two family members close to me who I love and who love me, and just like feeling quite. But then I feel like, is that, I don't know, I'm just kind of really aware of the grasping. It's suddenly such a sort of avalanche of appreciation for this life I find myself in, and all of this as well, the finding somebody yourselves, and who really speak to what you speak of, what you say really speaks to me. Another thing I feel huge gratitude for. I don't know, yeah, we did just speak to a bit about, maybe you could talk a little bit about the difference between just feeling like immense gratitude, but where that, I don't know, I don't know, I suppose I feel a little unsure. I'm just not used to feeling happy and appreciative and grateful. And now it feels a bit like, am I going to be clinging to that? Because what if things change? But I don't know. It seems so small, the things I'm grateful for, that I don't know. I don't think anyone's going to take away my comfy bed, but I don't know. I feel like maybe there's grasping arising from all this loveliness that I'm suddenly appreciating.
Yeah, I think don't worry about the grasping. Um, the Buddha said that being happy is important to our development. So having gratitude, I mean, you'll know if you're grasping because then it'll feel bad. You'll have suffering with that. But if we're experiencing gratitude for all the good things and the people in our life, that is a very positive, helpful kind of mental state. And I think that if you observe what that is, it even is more, like it helps to put even more of a beauty and bright light on it. I don't think it's a problem at all. I wouldn't worry about clinging to it. Just knowing that, this is what's arising, and that gratitude, that appreciation can be cultivated and developed. Yeah, I think it's wonderful. So a happy mind is easily concentrated, the Buddha said. And all these kinds of joy, the joy of gratitude, the joy of, the retreat in June at Cloud Mountain is called 9 Days of Joy. And we're going to look at all different kinds of joy each day. And of course, it's not going to be joyful for every participant there for all the time, but part of it is really being present with what's not joyful in a way that we can, let go. And so, you're not always going to feel like this, but you can be aware of this feeling and appreciate it and know that it's helpful, it's supportive. And then when you're not happy and in this kind of mode, then just be present with that and feel that you don't have to be wrapped up in any of it. But yeah, while it's there, let your heart be lifted and enjoy practicing with it.
I think there's just the one sort of difference in feeling is that the unjoyfulness now feels so not personal because of this sense of being a guest in my life.
It's good.
But then the joy is so vivid. It feels like, but it doesn't, I suppose it isn't personal, but it feels odd that the unpleasant is become so less dominant.
Mm-hmm.
And the joyful has become so much more dominant. Still, I can't believe that that's okay.
Yeah, that's totally okay. And if it switches again, it's also okay because you can observe it. There's an underlying, my experience and my understanding from like these teachers I trust is that the underlying truth is positive. It's loving. And whether we see it as joyful or contentment or whatever, it's like that's really the position of ultimate reality. Yeah, thank you, Catherine. Neil?
Yeah, I just wanted to share an insight that came up for me when Joni was speaking. Um, I've been having a lot of really vivid dreams the last week or so.
Mhm.
Really, some of them are really more nightmares. And a couple of them have stuck with me throughout the day in the form of, well, I didn't realize that it was what it was, but I would be anxious the following day, and then it would suddenly hit me, oh, it's from that dream, which is not real, but which I could see is coming from real feelings and real memories that are all kind of meshing together in my mind as I sleep. And so what occurred to me when Joni was talking about memory is there's really no difference between a dream and a memory. They're
Mhm.
totally not real. The feelings in them were real at one time, but they're not coming from the present moment. And it's as I mean, it's easy for me to say this, but as easy as it could be to just stop and think, oh, that's all coming from a dream. I can
Mhm.
let it go.
Mhm.
We should be able to say, oh, that's coming from a memory. I can let it go because it's not happening right now. So that was an insight that was helpful for me.
Yeah.
So I appreciated Joni's share, and I appreciate you as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. It's true. And Catherine's example too of, I'm a guest. I'm, these ways of perceiving really help us see through the illusion of conventional reality. Like the memory is just it's just a shadow from the past. It's not um, the real thing. But
Right.
then
And like Joni said, it might not even be what really happened. Yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
it probably isn't. You know, first of all, there's even if what we remember is accurate, which I strongly doubt. There's so much context around it that we don't remember. The reasons why we said that thing or the reasons why we did that thing. It's all kind of like gone now. We can't reconstitute it. We're never going to be able. And then even when we're in a situation, there's so much that we're unaware of that are the causes that are coming up. The way we perceive someone else, I know what they're saying, why they're saying it. It comes from all of these causes that are hidden to us. So good to see you too. But this is really important to recognize. And the more we can investigate, well, what is real? What is real in this conventional realm? We keep peeling off the layers when we start to recognize none of it. Peg, go ahead.
What you just mentioned about conditioning, I think is important because I've had moments where I've looked back and things that I regret or feel remorse about. And I realize how much I'm how much my sense of self, present and past, is acting out there. And I've been able to see sometimes how active conditioning was and how really I was less active in, it wasn't all about the supreme me making a decision to act in a certain way. There was so much of it that was what was happening around me. And then I'm in the present looking back, and my present conditioning is shaping my view of what happened in the past. It's really impossible to have a clean view in any sense. I realized this when I saw ways in which my children were acting, and I could see the types of conditions that affected me at the same age. And it's like it's the defilements, they come, and they your sense of agency is not necessarily in accord with reality.
That's right. And we can forgive, we can recognize that's true for ourselves and others. We're conditioned to do things. Often we think we have choice, but we don't. Much less than we think. We take responsibility for things we really don't control. It's yeah, and it's not like we want to recognize when the sense of self is involved, because all of that self-recrimination is coming from that sense of self, whether it's personal conditioning or social conditioning. It's still coming out of that belief that I am this separate being and I've acted in this way, or I'm this way, I'm like this, and or others have done these things to me, and then this is why I am this way. But when we see that with wisdom, the insight into it, that, some people have been mentioning ways in which they've gained a sense of the truth of what's really going on, then we let it go. And we can't, like I said, we can't make ourselves let go, because that's the self trying to do something again. So whenever we see, the way we think of ourselves, the way we think of our practice, the way we think of the things in our life, if it's the self trying to do something, we can step back from that. Observe, this is the way it is. This is how it feels. This is how it is when I'm trying to do something, get something, be something. It's right there in the chain of dependent origination. That becoming leads to suffering. When we're present with it, like a blank space, present with it with wisdom from the position of Dhamma rather than self, there's so much forgiveness, there's so much letting go. And we can do that every time, every level of this conditioned experience. Thank you all. It's very nice to have everybody here. It's good to do this together. When we share our stories, it helps to open things up for our investigation. Take care, everybody.